Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is John from the Mercenary Miniature YouTube Painter channel, and I'm here today. I've just come back from a weekend of gaming in West Wales. For many of you on the 6th edition page would know, Mr. Alexander Storch does a lot of weekends. So he does campaigns, tournaments, whatnot. And I've just come back from a tournament at his house. 16 of us all playing lots of different scenarios with all lovely different terrain. I can't thank him enough. And if anyone's ever interested, make sure you keep an eye out on the 6th edition Facebook page because he's always posting on there and it's always good stuff. His tournaments are always really well run with lots of friendly people and the like. So I've just come back from there and I thought I'd do a quick video showcasing my bubonic court list that I played and just talk through the games quickly, how the list done, how the unit's done, what I thought was good, what I thought wasn't great, and let you all know how I got on. So I'll go through the army first quickly, then we'll have a quick breakdown of it at the end. In the court, we had 20 Plague Monks full command, another 20 Plague Monks full command, 3 Poison Rat Swarms, 24 Giant Rats, 21 Rotten Rodents, which are the equivalent of Clan Rats. In the special, we had 2 lots of 7 Censer Bearers, which are there and there. And then in the rare, I had 2 units of Rat Ogres. So a 3 there and a 4 there. In the character slot, the big man, the Plague Pontifex on the Cauldron right there. I've used Skrulk for that model. And then I had a Plague Priest here, a level 2 Plague Chanter there, and then a Stinky Thing, which is essentially a Chieftain just there. So in the first round of the tournament, I was drawn against a Strigoi Vampire list. And if anyone doesn't know the scenarios, we were drawn Headhunter, which is essentially a pitch battle, but characters count as double points if they're killed in combat and carried basically like a standard. So the game was very close. With the summons he was getting off, he had a lot of casters, 3 level 2s on his count. I couldn't stop all the summons, so I was getting frenzied around the table quite a lot. And by turn 4, I was thinking it was going to be curtains for the Plague Rats. But thanks to this chap here, managing to hold on in 3 rounds of combat against his count, his Strigoi count, which then allowed me to flank him with the Cauldron unit, wipe out his count turn 4, and then he had 3 turns of crumbling basically with the combat round, and then his last 2 turns we managed to get a decent win there, which was 1803 to 755 in the victory points. So game 1, very good game against Rob, and we managed to pull a strong win out. So in round 2, I was drawn against Vampires again, but this time it was the List of Sylvania out of the Storm of Chaos book. Played by Jeff. You've seen Jeff on the channel. He's always a fun gent to play against, and his lists are always pretty fun. But we drew Ancient Artifact, which was, funnily enough, the game we did play on the channel as well. But essentially, it's a marker in the middle, 400 points, the table. The table is split diagonally, and basically it's essentially pitch battle again, but your 18-inch deployment apart, and whoever holds the objective, you get counters from turn 2. Whoever holds it at the end gains 400 victory points. So this time Jeff didn't have as much magic as the last vampire list, although he did have his raising markers. But I got first turn, which was pretty handy, so I managed to force the equation a bit. The Plague Swarms, I managed to get to hold up his Black Coach for quite a lot of turns because I was a little bit worried that I didn't really have too much to stop it. And then we sort of got into combat everywhere. He started trying to frenzy bait me with his chaff. Obviously, he couldn't flee anywhere, so I did manage to kill off a lot of his fell bats, dire wolves, and all of that in the first sort of 2 turns. And then Jeff lined himself up, I think turn 3, for a big Van Hels in the flank of this unit with 2 characters in. I did have a scroll spare to stop him, so if he needed a double 6 base lead, but he failed to get the Van Hales off. And then in my following turn, this unit then, the way he positioned his vampires, they managed to flank him, and this unit of rat ogres could see the front as well, so they managed to charge the front of the unit. In 2 rounds of combat, we crumbled his unit with his count in, killing all the zombies and then crumbling the count. And then he had 3 turns of crumbling, which was pretty brutal for his army. So we held the counter as well, as this unit was sat on it for a good 3 turns, which meant in the end we got a big win out the second game, which was 2966 to 709 in the Ancient Artifact, which boosted me right up the table. So the last game of day 1 on the Saturday, I was drawn against the Dwarves with Will. He had a nice list, 2 units of Ironbreakers, Longbeards, great weapons, Dwarf Warriors, and then he had a few War Machines, but he did bring the Anvil, which I always love to see. It's always fun playing Dwarves with the Anvil. So I was thinking my magic wasn't going to work. Previously, I haven't, in the other 2 games, I hadn't got much magic off because the vampires had a fair bit of stopping. And then in this game, same sort of thing again. I knew playing against Will's Dwarves, we were playing capture, so it was the 3 objectives in the middle of the table. The one in the middle is worth 400, the 2 on the side are 150, but if you hold both on the side, it's 500 points. I thought a straight up fight wasn't going to be very good for me, as he could have armor checked most of my units, even with all the attacks I'd have. His Ironbreakers were a 2-up save, his Longbeards were a 3-up save. So I didn't really want to get into combat with him the best I could. So the giant rat sort of ran at one flank of his to try and get as close to the anvil as possible, because if you're in combat with the anvil, it can't ring. So that was the plan there. Everything else sort of milled around on the left flank, with my rat ogres being sent to try and attack a few units, and my rat swarms to try and get his war machines. This unit managed to run at the left-hand flank and managed to sweep round and pick off his war machines. And these boys just sort of held the objective to the left-hand side whilst trying to get plagues off. So after I'd managed to get through, in this game, considering Will had 8 dispel dice, he took one of mine, so I only had 8 power. I did actually get quite a lot of plagues off. So we wrecked his Longbeards, wrecked his Ironbreakers. Annoyingly, we didn't finish off his Ironbreakers. They managed to survive with 3 models. And then we pretty much killed all his war machines. But he picked off my rat ogres, the sensor bearers. The giant rats did survive, but were under half. The swarms got killed in the end. My 2 big blocks did survive, along with my characters. But he held the middle objective and the flank objective for a 550 point lead there. So Will edged that one. It was a close game, but he edged it 1592 to 1149 to the Dwarves, which still, after that, I was in 2nd place for the day with the Wood Elves top with Dean's List, who I'll be playing in the morning. So I was quite pleased with that. 2 decent wins and a very narrow defeat against an army, the Dwarves, that they were the ones, them and the Wood Elves, who I'd be playing in the next game, I didn't really want to be playing against, if I'm perfectly honest. So on to game 4 was the Wood Elves, who were top. They had a double 3-man list with 3 lots of archers, 4 lots of dryads, 2 spell singers, and some Warhawk riders. So annoyingly, I didn't get first turn in this game. The game was incursion, which if you look in the rules pack, basically, so your deployment's 12 inches. Any unit in the next 12-inch zone get 50 points at the end of the game. The next unit in the next 12 inches would get 100 points. And if you're in your enemy's deployment zone, you get 150 per unit, but characters also count separately, as well as being a pitch, basically the same as pitch battle, bar the table quarters. So I knew Dean's Warhawks. I didn't really have too much to deal with them. and I knew they were just going to try and march block me. Annoyingly, I didn't get first turn, so basically that's what he did. But I split my forces pretty much completely in two on two flanks, as Dean had dropped the wood in the middle to try and disrupt him the best I could. So the left-hand flank basically had 2 units of the Censer Bearers, my big Cauldron unit, and one unit of Rat Ogres and the Plague Swarms. And then the other flank, I put the Rotten Rodents, the Green Plague Monks, and the Giant Rats with a unit of Rat Ogres as well. Basically, the Warhawks fly down first turn, march blocked all of those units with 20 archers in his corner just firing at them. And then the other side was a bit of a melee. I did manage to get the Plague Swarms into Dryads. They'd done a good job of poisoning them and killing quite a few off. The Rat Ogres managed to get into another unit of Dryads, managed to do a fair few wounds, but didn't manage to break them annoyingly. And then I think it was my turn 3. Dean had made a few charges, wiped out the Rat Ogres and the Plague Swarms, but left himself open for quite a few charges off the Cauldrons unit. So basically they swept round in sort of the middle of the table and managed to hit, I think, 2 units of Dryads. And then, the first unit of Dryads managed to kill, then overrun into one of his characters, the one on foot, the Kindred, kill him, and then managed to get up the table. Again, magic was pretty poor. Dean had 4 Dispel Scrolls and quite a few dice. So I didn't manage to get, I think I got 1 plague off all game. This side here was just sort of fought to a stalemate. Dean didn't want to engage his tree man into my unit of Plague Monks, fearing that he might break, obviously, with the combat res and whatnot. So it was all a bit of a standstill. These guys managed to get at the table, but got shot at pretty much down to half. The Giant Rats got the same. They did get a combat with the Dryads. They broke. Dean didn't chase, and luckily they rallied in Dean's deployment zone. The same thing happened with these guys. They did get shot from the Warhawk Riders behind them, which caused a panic in the shooting phase, which ran them up into Dean's deployment zone, and then they rallied in there, luckily again. And then in the sort of last turns, these Censer Bearers managed to get a unit of archers that were over in Dean's deployment zone up there, and then these rats and the Giant Rats, where they had rallied, they managed to get into the rest of the archers and sort of finish them off. So it was basically a dead heat. Neither of us had killed a particularly good amount of each other's army, but with the rules, pretty much all my characters were in my big block here. So I hopped all of them out into Dean's deployment zone and with them in there. So the actual scenario points, I scored a massive 1100, plus my kills got me to 1961, and Dean got 800, and he had only managed to do 600 odd points of damage to my army. So he was only at 1421. So it gave me a decent-ish win in that game, game 4, which propelled me, I think I possibly might have been top of the leaderboard going into the last game, whether I'd caught Dean or not, but I would have still been in second. So the last game then, because I'd already played Will and obviously Dean, those two had to play each other. They were on the top table, and I and Big Sam's Chaos Dwarves. Now, this is my favourite scenario. It's taking hold. There's no victory points in consideration, but there's 5 tokens. 3 have to be along the middle line, and then each of you get one in your deployment zone. They have to be 10 away from the table edge and 10 away from other markers. But if you get your opponent's token, it's 5 points essentially. The middle one's worth 3. The 2 ones are worth 2 on the ends, and then if you hold your own, it's worth 1. So basically you can get up to 13 points for a maximum win. So the game started off with the Chaos Dwarves. He had a nice army, Sam, 2 units of blunderbusses, a unit of warriors, a unit of black orcs, a unit of bull centaurs, and then his Taurus with his lord. And then he had a Death Shrieker, Earth Shaker, sorry. Then the Rocket and a Bolt Thrower. But it was a fun army to play against. I haven't played Chaos Dwarves for a long time now. But he got first turn, annoyingly again, and the one model I knew I was going to struggle to deal with was going to be his Taurus. I didn't have enough. He had too much mobility and I didn't really have anything that could possibly hurt it. So he flew it up on my flank. All his other stuff sort of shuffled around to the middle. The Black Orcs come up on one flank. I had left some sensor bearer. I had left some... No, I hadn't left anything there. I let him have his left-hand flank where his marker was. And then his ball centers were on the right flank where I had placed both my tokens. So the one on the center line and I placed one behind the hill. My home objective. So my turn, I sort of shuffled up. Tried casting a few plagues and whatnot. But I did try and bait him. I left a tight charge on some rat ogres for his Taurus, which I thought he would take the bait to, luckily. And he did. So all my stuff shuffled up. I was out of range of plagues and whatnot. And he did manage to essentially the Earth Shaker for the Chaos Dwarves, even if it doesn't hit, it does a 2d6 range and it halves your movement on your unit. So all my stuff, as he got first turn, was sort of stuck together. He managed to half all my movements. But then in his turn, he charged his Taurus into my Rat Ogres. Obviously killed them. Only killed one, sorry, but he did pursue. Now he pursued right into my line where I had left these chaps just ready for him, where he was behind my lines. And then in my turn 2, I obviously charged these chaps in. Everything else sort of moved up. And that was pretty much it. He managed to stop my first lot of plagues. But in this game, I did actually manage to use the Cauldron and get a lot of plagues off. But essentially, the best thing that I couldn't believe they managed to do it. 3 of these managed to get in to the Bull Taurus and they carved him up pretty well. They managed to kill him in one round of combat, which just left the Lord on foot. I reformed my units so they were facing the Taurus, just obviously if he killed these, which I thought he was going to do, I had my giant rats there for him to run into, and then they were going to get flanked by these guys here, which was my plan, but these done such a good job I didn't even need them for that. On the left-hand flank, I put the swarms just to try and hold his bull centaurs up, which he did charge them turn 2, and that was just a sort of him trying to get through them, obviously being unbreakable, but I couldn't kill any of them. And then in his turn 3 again, it was much for muchness, shuffling round, stopping my units. The bolt thrower chipped a few of these guys off. And that was about it, really. In my turn, I charged these into the bull centers to help out the rat swarms. And they did do well. They held them up again for another 2 turns. And I charged, obviously, being frenzied, these and these, when I turned them round, had to charge his Lord. They didn't kill him first time, but they killed him on his turn next time, which was luckily... no, they didn't kill him, sorry. They made him break, and he fled, and we ran him down on Sam's turn. Now, over here, he finally got through with the bull centers, this unit here, and these guys. I think that might have been the one mistake, whether they would have been in or not, but I had lined the second unit of sensor bearers up if he did want to overrun, or pursue, sorry. So he did pursue these guys. He didn't pursue far enough, which left his bull centers close to the edge of the table. And then in my turn, these guys charged in. They did kill 3, which meant, and they had a flank, which meant I won by 1 because he had a rank, outnumber, and a banner. But then after much deliberation about who was on top the hill and who wasn't, we rolled for it. I'd won by 2, and he did break on an 8. So they had basically finished off anything that was going to threaten my back objective, luckily. So what I done then, I popped the chieftain out. He come over, held the objective on the middle line here, and the sensor bearers come back and held my objective. And then it's basically a fight for the middle. One unit of rat ogres had managed to break through his blunderbusses at the top, but I had death frenzied them, so they were slowly whittling down. Then, like I said, essentially it was a fight for the middle. He had a unit of Black Orcs, a unit of warriors, and then in the end, basically last turn, he frenzy baited these in. It was a massive melee, but I cast a plague into it, killed 15 of my own models, but killed 5 of Sam's, and then they panicked off the middle, and I managed to get that. I think I might have won the tournament for this rat ogre over here because he ran into his Earthshaker, killed the crew, which was basically on the objective, killed 2 crew, they fled, obviously outnumbered by a fear causer, and I needed to probably roll a 4 on my flea, and I would have stayed on the objective, which would have got me a bigger win. But you can't have it all your own way, especially with Frenzy. So the last game, I got a 6-2. I held my own objective, the left-hand side middle one, and the centre one. Sam held the right-hand side token, and no one held his home objective. So it was a 6-2 in the end. So all in all, I did finish second with this army. It was a brilliant weekend. I had 5 really good games. Probably my favourite was the last one against the Chaos Dwarves, but then I love the take and hold scenario. It's always really good fun and makes for a fun game. The army itself played. I enjoyed it. I would say it's a fairly strong army. If you're going to make it stronger, I would say go for another Plague Chanter instead of the Chieftain, obviously to bulk your magic up. The Cauldron did blow up in one of my games. It did blow up in the game against Jeff, but other than that, it pretty much hung around the whole time. I never really, until the last game, got that many plagues off. Obviously, with this guy, his Warpstone tokens are really handy, so you get 3 of them with him. And obviously you can spam that over 3 turns, normally trying to cast Plague. But like I said, a lot of people have the Spell Scrolls. Obviously in the Wood Elf game, he had 4 of the Spell Scrolls, plus however many dice. He does get Plague, but trying to get it on 3 dice, you can obviously save his Warpstone token, which I did a few times, and try and 4 dice it, but it's still a bit dicey, even with 4 dice, trying to get a 13. The Plague Monks are just Plague Monks. They don't hit very hard, but they get lots of attacks, so they are quite good for that. They do seem to intimidate a lot of people, especially with the Cauldron in. People don't really want to be fighting them. The Plague Priest here, I did have the Bands of Power on him, but it only come into handy, I think, in my game with... Oh, no, he had a challenge with a Dwarf Slayer and a Demon Slayer or Dragon Slayer. Managed to kill him because he had the Bands of Power on, so that was quite good. Obviously, I would spam Plague and then drop that one when I needed to, which gives him double the strength. He was fairly decent. My character survived pretty well most games, but then obviously, like I said, I had him in the Plague Monk blocks. The Censer Bearers are brilliant. They were my favourite unit all weekend. Without the Disciples rule, so you can place them wherever, they're a lot stronger again. And being special, you can run 2 units without worrying about taking up your rare slots. But I would say they were probably my MVPs over the weekend. They dealt out some horrible damage. Most times they got in. The Rat Ogres I really enjoyed. Again, in the Skaven list, they're quite weak because you kill the Packmasters with a bit of shooting and then they generally flee. But in this, where they're frenzied and you ain't got to worry about their ITP, so you ain't got to worry about the psychology, they are a lot stronger, I would say. And being able to Death Frenzy them, which I've done quite a few games, managed to give them 5 attacks, they do a lot of damage. Plague Swarms are like all swarms. They were good. They were strong. They'd done their jobs. They held stuff up. They managed to kill quite a bit with poison and things like that. And these chaps here, they were pretty good. A lot of games, especially the objective-based ones, I would sort of put them on an objective out the way, turn them so they couldn't see anything, and then frenzy them so they couldn't be shot to death. I'd done that a couple of times just to give them ITP, and that was always quite handy. It's always quite good to have a unit as well that can flee. Obviously, the whole army can't, so having at least one unit that can sort of try and bait your opponent is quite handy. But all in all, a brilliant weekend. Again, I'd like to reiterate, thank you, Alexander Storch. It was a brilliant weekend. And thanks to all the people I played against and everyone else that was there. If you're interested in it, I would look on the Sickford page and look for when Alex is posting events. They are always good fun, always played in the spirit of the game. You see a lot of brilliant painted armies. And like I said before, the scenery and everything is the best you can see. So that is me done. I showcased my army. I've talked about the weekend. Feel free, if you want to see my list, pop me a DM or whatever it is in the comments. I'll send it over to you, let you see what it is. And thanks again for watching. This has been John from the Mercenary Miniature Painter YouTube channel, and I will see you again.